My husband's secretary tweeted a picture of a burning red candle with the caption, "The light will break through the dark and shatter all fears." In the same picture was my husband's hand, wearing the watch I gave him for our 7th anniversary. The night I was hospitalized after a miscarriage, my husband was with his secretary who was afraid of the dark because of a blackout at her place. We had known each other since we were kids, from school uniforms to wedding gowns. People envied our love, but we still couldn't escape the 7-year itch. On the anniversary of my mom's death, my husband Leo was out of it all day. He received a call that night and hurriedly left me. After dinner, I saw the secretary's tweet. I drove myself crazy with thoughts and accidentally slipped in the shower, a sharp pain shooting through my lower abdomen. I was confused when I saw fresh red blood, thinking my period had come, but the pain continued and the blood didn't stop. Realizing something was wrong, I tried to make a call, but my phone was on the nightstand. Feeling weak, I leaned against the wall and slowly walked. Those few steps felt like a lifetime. I called an ambulance and then dialed Leo. This time someone picked up. It was a woman's voice. I recognized it, his secretary, Joy. Leo was in the shower. My heart skipped a beat and I hung up abruptly. Oddly, I didn't feel as hurt as I thought I would. It was more like a confirmation of what I had suspected. Leo was having an affair. I had sensed it before. We were in a marital slump. A year ago, he started leaving early and coming home late, frequently traveling for work. Even when home, he buried himself in his study. We barely talked, and any conversation led to arguments. Quarrels were common. We'd have cold wars for days. He'd stay out for a few days and then come back with a gift, and I'd reluctantly make up. He was always busy. Even as the boss, he'd work through holidays. Sometimes I wondered if the company was going bankrupt since he couldn't spare even half a day. This Valentine's Day, I prepared a candlelit dinner, waiting until 11 p.m. He called last minute to say he was working late. The food went cold and straight into the trash. Right before our anniversary, we had another fight. He came home late, drunk, reeking of alcohol, and passed out as soon as he hit the bed. The next day, I gave him the watch I had picked out carefully. He awkwardly promised to wear it every day, and he hadn't taken it off since. I thought maybe all couples go through this stage, and we needed to understand each other to go further. So, I cautiously tried to change myself. I learned new dishes, changed my style, trying everything to rekindle our feelings. But now I fully realized, it wasn't the 7-year itch. His heart had strayed. It was my best friend and who arrived first. She teared up as soon as she saw me and stayed by my side all night. Leo showed up late the next morning, just after 10. He was wearing the same clothes from the day before. Though he tried to tidy up, the wrinkles on his shirt were still noticeable. And saw him and immediately started shouting, "What kind of husband are you? Do you even know she had a miscarriage? She called you all night and you didn't pick up. For all anyone knew, you could have been dead." Leo looked at my flat stomach in disbelief, mumbling, "How is this possible? How is it not possible? I'm telling you, Leo, if you can't be a good husband, give Nora her freedom. Who the hell wants to be treated like this?" Leo ignored Anne. He glanced at me, reaching out to touch my belly but stopped midway, his fingers trembling uncontrollably. I stared at his wrist and asked hoarsely, "Where's your watch?" "What?" he asked subconsciously, noticing for the first time that it was missing. "Left it at the office," he said nonchalantly. So, men can lie so effortlessly, without a trace. A wave of disgust washed over me, making me want to vomit. I didn't want to look at him anymore. Turning my back to him, I weakly said, "I don't want to see you right now." "Nora, I said get out," and cursed him out of the room. Tears soaked my pillow. I touched my belly, where it was flat. There should have been a life growing there, but it was less than 2 months along. I had just discovered the pregnancy, barely had time to feel joy or excitement, and now it was gone. If Leo hadn't left last night, would things have been different? Or if I hadn't checked Twitter, hadn't seen that picture, maybe my baby would still be here. The child I had hoped for 7 long years, gone because of me. My dad passed early, and my mom died 5 years ago. Because of my broken family, I always hoped to have a child and build a complete, loving family of my own. We've been married for 7 years, but because of my complications, we hadn't had children. For a while, I was obsessed with trying all sorts of remedies, hoping to conceive, practically torturing myself. Leo used to worry about me back then. Seeing me like that, he got really angry, forbidding me from taking any more strange concoctions, saying if I had a sip, he'd drink a whole bowl. He said, worst case, we go to the hospital together. After that, I stopped mentioning the remedies, but the thought lingered more and more. I once dreamed I had a child. He looked like both me and Leo. The 3 of us bathed in the sunset, the baby riding on his shoulders, his hand holding mine. We walked home together, our shadows stretching long in the evening sun. But that day will never come. I stayed in the hospital for 2 more days. Leo stayed outside the room door during the day, too afraid to come in, peeking in just like when we first started dating and he'd done something wrong. The woman in the next bed thought we were just a bickering young couple. She praised Leo while advising me. "You can't be too stubborn in a marriage," she said. "He seems like a good kid, always here for you. Can't you talk things through? Couples always make up eventually." Looking at Leo and how he resembled some kind of big, docile dog, I thanked her for her advice. "I've made up my mind, don't worry," I said reassuringly. Before being discharged from the hospital, I got a lawyer to draft up the divorce papers. Leo came to pick me up, but Anne looked at him with something close to hatred. It took a while before she reluctantly let me get in the car. I didn't mention the secretary to her, just told her I wanted to divorce Leo. Even then, and figured it must have been his fault. Once I got in the car, I noticed Joy sitting in the passenger seat. Joy wore a black business suit, light makeup, looking bright and confident. She greeted me with her usual radiant smile. From what happened that night, I was sure she didn't tell Leo about the call and deliberately kept it from him. She turned to me and joked, "Just came from a meeting with Leo, and he's dropping me off on the way. You don't mind, do you?" I glanced at her and said flatly, "I mind." She didn't expect me to be so blunt and was stunned for a moment. Quickly, she put on a pitiful look and turned to Leo. Leo cleared his throat to smooth things over. "She's just joking. Nora's like that." "Nora, Joy's place is on the way. I'll drop her off first." I turned to watch the scenery outside, annoyed but compliant. Halfway there, Leo's phone rang, and Joy answered skillfully, "Leo's driving." Whatever the person on the other end said, Joy then held the phone to his ear, waited for him to finish, and took it back. I watched their practiced move, reminded of how Leo and I used to be. To an outsider, I might even look more like the mistress here. Leo seemed to notice this and hurriedly explained through the rearview mirror, "I don't like answering calls while driving, so I let Joy handle it." "Yeah, don't get the wrong idea," Joy said while Leo wasn't looking, throwing a challenging smile at me. I found it pretty funny. What kind of business trip needs the boss to drive himself? Joy probably is always there when he's driving. After so many years, running such a big company, and still so clueless. Leo and I started dating right after high school. He was my desk mate back then. His grades weren't great. When he failed a test, I asked what he was doing during class. He cheekily replied, "Just staring at you." I was a good girl in school. He chased me for 3 years before I finally said yes. My goal was a university, and to be with me. He got up at 5 a.m. every day in senior year and studied until 1 a.m. He'd get sleepy during the day and keep a bag of chili peppers in his desk. After a week of this, he got sores, so I bought him some balm. Leo was bad at some subjects. He scored 140 in math but only 70 in English on the college entrance exam, so we didn't end up in the same school. On results day, he cried his heart out by the river. His best buddy Henry dragged me to comfort him. He sobbed and apologized to me, looking like a little girl. I said, "Long-distance relationships can work too." He took a while to process that, then spun me around in excitement. He eventually went to a school near a university and majored in finance. By his junior year, he'd started a business with friends. It went well initially, and they did quite well for a while. But by my senior year's internship, they were losing money and almost went under. Leo smoked and drank every day back then. Couldn't stand seeing him like that. I rashly said I'd help him rebuild. So I quit my job, joined his company as an assistant and secretary. Then we both started drinking too. Sometimes you just can't avoid it at business dinners, even with Leo shielding me. We met all kinds of people. Once, after finally securing an investment, the guy in charge was a balding man sitting next to me. He kept pouring me drinks and eyeing me lecherously. His hands got increasingly bold, almost touching my leg when Leo saw and punched him. If no one had intervened, Leo probably would have beaten him to death. That night, with bloodshot eyes, he pulled me into his arms, repeating my name over and over. His warm tears dripped onto my neck as he said, "Never again. I'll protect you. You'll never have to suffer like this again." The first year our company saw some progress. We got our marriage certificate. The wedding was grand. He promised to love, protect, and cherish me forever. When young, it's easy to be moved. I cried on our wedding day, believing it was the start of my happiness. All great love stories end at the happiest point, but little did I know that was just the start of another story. For me, it was destined to be a sad tale. As the company grew, I lost interest in the business fights, so I resigned with Leo's agreement, keeping 15% of the shares. I'd study photography and open a studio, doing portraits and short videos. Gradually, I built a small following and earned a little money. Joy joined just as I left the company. Leo initially talked a lot about the new secretary, how meticulous and diligent she was. Eventually, he mentioned her sitting on the steps, holding her stomach in pain, reminding him of my younger self. I'd added Joy on Twitter and saw her frequent posts about work and outings with colleagues. Leo was often in the pictures, standing next to her. I was busy with my studio and didn't pay much heed then. I even told him to take care of the newbie. Thinking back, it's quite ironic. The housekeeper had taken a month off, and Leo only asked about meals when he noticed no one was cooking. The housekeeper's son was sick, so she asked for a month off. "Didn't you come home?" He awkwardly explained. "I went to see you at the hospital during the day. Had so much work piled up, I went to the office at night." I scrutinized him like seeing him for the first time. In his early 30s, he wasn't overweight, still handsome, wealthy, emanating a commanding presence, a success in most people's eyes. But not the man who promised to be my lifelong partner. "Why are you looking at me like that?" "Nothing." I shook my head and said, "Since the housekeeper's away, how about you cook tonight? Haven't had your cooking in years. Make me something." He was about to refuse but hesitated when he heard my last words and reluctantly nodded. There was no food at home, so I told him to go to the grocery store himself. Maybe he felt guilty, so he agreed to my request without hesitation. After he left, I stared at the empty house, lost in thought. After getting married, we moved from a rented apartment to this villa. It had only been 4 days since I was last home, but it felt like a lifetime. I wandered around the villa, from the gate to the garden, to the living room. Every plant, every piece of furniture, was carefully chosen back then. In the center of the garden stood a tall mimosa tree, and beneath it was a large patch of roses, my favorite flowers. I felt somewhat reluctant to leave. Leo returned soon after, carrying lots of groceries. Leaning against the kitchen door, I watched him bustle around, my mind drifting back to when we first moved in together. After graduating college, we rented a tiny 30-square-meter apartment. It was the start of his business, and we were dirt poor. He cooked every meal. At first, he even mixed up the sugar and salt, but slowly, he became quite a good cook. Once his business took off, he became so busy with social events that he never cooked at home again. I had always thought he must have gotten rusty in the kitchen. During those days in the hospital, I didn't speak to Leo but obsessively checked Joy's Twitter to try to find any clue. On the second day in the hospital, Joy posted pictures of a home-cooked meal, dishes I used to love. It made me jumpy, and later that day, I caught a faint whiff of food on Leo. I couldn't gather anything concrete from just photos and scents, but I had a strong hunch. Leo had cooked that meal. A man who hadn't lifted a finger in our kitchen for years went to someone else's house to cook while I was in the hospital. The day I miscarried, I was filled with hatred, plotting countless ways to get back at them. The best scenario would be to kick Leo out with nothing and ruin Joy's reputation. But when I saw that photo, I suddenly felt it wasn't necessary. The love was gone. The child too. Filling my mind with revenge was just wasting my time and energy. He remembered I loved spicy food. The entire table was covered in red dishes. He seemed unaware that someone who just miscarried shouldn't eat those. How could I not eat? I changed the subject. "It must taste great, right?" He said, "Try it and you'll know." I flashed the brightest smile I had in days and asked, "Is the food outside better than what we have at home?" He looked at me, puzzled. I got up and tore open the envelope on the sofa, pulling out some papers. "Divorce papers, 2 copies. Let's get a divorce." "Nora, stop joking." His face turned sullen instantly. "I'm not joking. The child's situation was an accident. I didn't know that day. If I had known. And what difference would it have made?" I interrupted. "Even if you knew I was pregnant, you still would have left me to go to Joy." He looked flustered at my words. "Don't say you wouldn't, Leo. That day you said something came up at work, but the truth is, Joy's power went out, right? She's afraid of the dark, so you drove 3 hours to be with her after one call. The day my mom died, you were out of town. You stayed on the phone with me all night, saying you'd never leave me alone again, that you'd always be by my side no matter what." I had always prided myself on being decisive, able to put an end to this failed marriage with a cold heart, but as the moment arrived, my nose tingled with the urge to cry. "You broke your promise." So, I struggled to hold back my sobs. "Let's get a divorce." "Nora." Leo's face paled, his voice dry. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have lied to you that day. But believe me, Nora, we didn't do anything. I really haven't done anything wrong by you. I promise I'll never leave you for someone else again. I'll keep my distance from her. Please, give me another chance. Let's not get divorced, okay?" I wasn't sure if I still believed in his words, but I knew the issue between us wasn't just Joy. If it wasn't Joy, it would be another woman. The real problem was that he had changed. I once heard that love eventually turns into familial affection when the passion fades. It's the familial bond that makes us weary of each other and binds us at the same time. I could maybe convince myself that they just slept under the same roof, but I couldn't deceive myself. Their interaction wasn't innocent. Emotional infidelity is infidelity too, and to me, it's even more disgusting than physical betrayal. I couldn't accept my husband thinking about someone else while eating and sleeping with me, worrying about another person when I needed him the most. You promised before we got married that if we divorced, you'd leave with nothing. I don't need that, but besides my original 15% of the company shares, I want another 5%. As for the car and house, I don't care how many properties you have outside, or the cars, but this house has to be mine. I had put my heart and soul into designing and decorating this villa. Just thinking about Joy or anyone else enjoying what I had created made me feel uneasy. Leo suddenly seemed affectionate, tirelessly explaining about Joy. That day, Joy sprained her ankle on the stairs, then her power went out at night and she didn't even have dinner. She felt like someone was following her when she went out for food and called me for help. I was just worried something might happen to her. There's really nothing between us. Men always know how to justify themselves. If she felt followed, you could have called the police. For a power outage, there are electricians. She could have asked other colleagues to accompany her. There were plenty of options, but you drove 3 hours to be with her. I took a pen and signed both copies, handing them to him. What's the point? Sign them. It's best for both of us. I don't agree. He snatched the papers, tore them up in anger, and threw the shreds on the floor. Forget about it. I won't agree to the divorce. With that, he slammed the door and didn't come home for the next 4 days. He was always this impulsive, always avoiding what he didn't want to face. When his business failed, he drowned himself in alcohol, numbing himself daily. Now, he thought that by staying away for a while, things would blow over, and we could go back to normal. When his friend called to tell me he was drunk at a bar and asked me to pick him up, I had just landed. Nora, Leo's drunk and kept calling your name. He won't let anyone else touch him. Can you come to get him? The person on the other end sounded cautious. I just got off the plane and felt a bit dizzy. Irritated, I muttered something and hung up the phone. The person called back several times, so I turned off my phone and followed the crowd out of the airport. And then her boyfriend Evan finally ended their 3-year long-distance relationship. They're planning to get married early next year. Her fiancé is local. This time they're meeting the parents and taking wedding photos. I brought 2 assistants with me. We plan to finish the photo shoot in 2 days and then have some time for fun. But I got sick after just 1 day at the beach. I usually don't get sick this easily. Maybe it's because I haven't fully recovered from the miscarriage and got a bit of jet lag. Shouldn't we go to the hospital? No, it's just dizziness. A nap will fix it. And handed me a cup of hot water, checking her phone now and then. Go on. Spend more time with your boyfriend. I'll just take a nap. She finally left after I assured her multiple times that I was fine. 2 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Thinking she forgot something, I opened the door to a weathered-looking man. Nora. Leo. The man standing there had messy hair, stubble, dark circles under his eyes, and a wrinkled suit. This disheveled look caught me off guard. He used to care so much about appearances. Even when we argued, he would act all lovey-dovey in front of others. I barely recognized him. What's going on with you? I frowned. His eyes were bloodshot. Without warning, he hugged me tightly, whispering, Nora, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I smelled alcohol mixed with an unfamiliar scent. The smell made my dizziness worse. When he leaned in quickly, I pushed him away instinctively. He stumbled and hit the doorknob, and his face twisted in pain. Come in, I sighed. We are still technically married. I couldn't be too harsh. The hit left a bruise on his lower back, and I lifted his shirt a bit to check. Above the bruise was a small scabbed wound. I had a fleeting thought which I dismissed, and asked the hotel for some medicinal alcohol to treat him. I was feverish, so my hands weren't very gentle. He took a sharp breath. It's okay, it doesn't hurt, he assured me quickly. His tone sounded oddly cheerful. After finishing the treatment, I asked him to leave. His pitiful gaze lingered on me. Nora, I got hurt because of you. I'm really sorry, so I treated your injury. But don't misunderstand, I won't change my mind about the divorce. He replied in a choked voice. Can't we not get divorced? No, I said, pushing him towards the door. He pulled me back, nearly begging, we can have kids later. I know I've been neglectful, and it's my fault. I know you're sad, but it'll never happen again. We can go back to how we were. We're just having a small issue, right? The truth is, he couldn't accept that our stable marriage was ending so suddenly. He couldn't believe I would decisively leave him. He's always followed his whims. Back then, He could stay up all night studying for a fleeting crush, start a business out of sheer passion in college, and neglect me when he found someone new. He never worried about consequences. He hide and cry over bad grades, binge drink after business failures, and turn to new people when our relationship faltered. But this time, I wouldn't cover for him. Leo, I called him like before. I know you, and you know me. Stop making excuses and don't excuse me either. You're tired of this. My love's almost gone. What's the point of a broken marriage? He slowly let go, unable to say another word, and left in silence. After Leo left in despair, I thought he'd disappear for a while, but he started showing up even more frequently over the next few days, and hugged my waist, her gaze on Leo and Evan chatting happily nearby. What's going on with you two? Why the divorce? We just fell out of love, I said. She clicked her tongue exaggeratedly. Your eyes say you're lying. He's looking all pitiful. You still care about him. I removed her hand, forcing a smile. Worry about yourself. Tomorrow you're meeting Evan's relatives. Nervous. She sighed deeply, shifting the conversation to outfits appropriate for tomorrow. Today we had the last photo shoot at the old town. Leo and Evan somehow hit it off, and Evan looked apologetic, clearly aware of my situation with Leo. It seemed Evan played a role in Leo finding me here, and, excited and nervous, chattered about meeting his parents, glowing with happiness. I couldn't help but wonder, if all marriages end up like ours, what will happen to Anne? Anne is loyal and easily influenced. I hoped Evan wasn't like Leo. The breeze was just right, and the shoot went smoothly today. Leo helped with everything, from cameras to directions. My assistants, slightly embarrassed, stood by. Boss, is that your husband? The younger assistant whispered. I gave her a look and whispered back, ex-husband. She was stunned, sneaking glances at Leo and then at me. Later, we dined at a restaurant. I went to the restroom and returned to find the only open seat was next to Leo. My assistants and Anne eagerly motioned for me to sit. Raising an eyebrow, I sat down slowly. Throughout dinner, the conversation kept circling back to me and Leo. I maintained my composure, offering polite responses or silent smiles. That night, Anne insisted on sharing a bed with me. We shoulder by shoulder lay on the bed. You're not happy today, she stated. I smiled but stayed silent. She turned on her side, propping her head with one hand. Are you really getting divorced? Speechless for a moment, she finally said in a sulky tone, I wonder which girl gets the better deal later. You've worked so hard for this empire. I couldn't help but laugh and patted her shoulder. Relax. Even if we divorce, half of the empire will be mine. I can still take care of you. Really? When have you ever suffered a loss? That's true. After Anne and her husband finished their wedding photos, I gave my two assistants a break and planned to have some fun myself. Leo insisted on tagging along. I didn't refuse. After 7 years of marriage, this was our first trip together. He let me rest on his shoulder when the journey tired me. When hiking up the mountain wore me out, he carried me to the top. We watched the sunset from the mountain and saw the sunrise by the sea. Like an ordinary couple on vacation, it felt as if there were no arguments or frustrations between us. For a moment, I wondered if the divorce decision was too drastic. Maybe this experience could help us improve. But quickly, I dismissed that thought. On the last day of the trip, I received an anonymous text message. In the dark room, the only light coming from the phone screen, there were intermittent low moans. After a long while, I stiffly raised my hand and with all my strength, threw the phone away. It hit the ground hard, the screen shattered into pieces, finally making no sound. The intertwined bodies in the video replayed in my mind, making my stomach churn. I retched in the bathroom for ages but nothing came out. When I looked up, I was startled by my own reflection in the mirror. The person in the mirror was pale, hair disheveled, looking like a ghost. I splashed my face with cold water, but my hands kept trembling. I had been certain Leo was cheating, but I had faith in his character, thinking it was just emotional, not physical. But that video was like a slap in the face. The faint scent on him that night, the scabs on his back, and his constant apologies when he held me. Everything replayed in my mind. Leo, after sleeping with another woman, came to me looking like a victim. I guess I have some kind of mental purity. Thinking about all the places he touched, all the physical contact these past few days made my skin crawl, like needles pricking my heart. Leo in the next room seemed to sense something, sending a few messages on Instagram. Nora, there's a well-rated place downstairs. Want to try it tomorrow morning? Are you asleep? Good night. I changed my flight and got up early the next day. Before boarding the plane, I sent him the video and another message. Tomorrow at 9, let's file for divorce. When I turned on my phone after the flight, missed calls and messages flooded in, causing my phone to lag. Most were from Leo, with a couple from Anne and Evan. Anne, home. Nora, just landed. Stepping out of the airport, looking at the familiar land, I was reminded of the first time Leo and I came to this city. Back then, we had nothing but a lot of passion, and he looked at me with eyes full of love. In a crowded and noisy place, he said, "I'll make lots and lots of money to take care of you and make you the happiest woman in the world." These years felt like a dream, the city's allure blinding, making us lose sight of our beginnings. The next morning, clouds loomed, hinting at rain. Leo waited at the door as agreed. After seeing the video, he probably felt too ashamed to explain, and stayed silent. When I came out, the clouds had dispersed, and the sun was shining. He mumbled, "I was drunk that day. It was just once. It doesn't matter." I waved behind my back as I walked away. Leo, in the end, had some conscience and gave me an additional 10% of the shares, making me the largest shareholder in the company. He wanted the villa, I agreed, but only after moving out everything I had furnished. Later, I joined a tour group, traveling around the country for photography material. Several of my works won awards. Sometimes, I'd get updates about Leo. He fired Joy after she made several scenes, claiming to be pregnant and calling him a scumbag. Leo, in front of the whole company, told her to get an abortion. It turned out Joy wasn't pregnant, but Leo's alcoholism was real. The next summer, Anne and Evan got married. I ran into Leo at the wedding. He looked shockingly thin, his clothes hanging on his frame like a skeleton. Evan, trembling, almost dropped the ring several times while putting it on Anne, stumbling over his vows, finally uttering her name. Moved to tears by Anne's happiness, I caught Leo's gaze across the room. He mouthed something, eyes filled with tears. Maybe recalling our own wedding, where he was too nervous to speak, finally expressing his love with "I do." In the third spring, Anne told me she was pregnant. The lake was beautiful, and I joked that we should call the baby Coco. Her daughter was born at the end of winter. I put work aside to be with her. Coco was a calm baby, mostly sleeping, quietly looking around and smiling when awake. Many came for her first month celebration, including Leo. It had been so long since I last saw him. He looked different, middle-age crises beginning to show, with a receding hairline and a hint of a beer belly. I tried to connect this person with the college Leo the first once knew. The following summer, I got an unsigned letter with just 4 words, "Peace and joy." I left it in a local trash bin. My baggage was too heavy to carry extra things.